Okay, now I see it. Starting stream. Okay, good evening, everybody. I should probably mute the stream that I have up to watch the chat. We're gonna wait a couple of seconds here to see how many people pour in, and then I guess we'll get started with the first thing.
So you can have another stream with 10 views.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, again to the most depressing podcast on the internet. Now, I thought that the most depressing podcast is the one where your guests are so uninterested they're texting while they're on camera, but what do I know?
And making hypocritical commentaries about beauty pageants.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I guess since that's not really anything important and it'll give people time to see the notifications and show up, um, the whole objectification argument came up again on this podcast that you may have heard of, The Best Debate in the Universe, which is never really a good debate anymore. I don't know if it ever
Well,
has been.
no, it's never really been a good debate. I
Well,
mean, there's never.
to me, it's like I almost feel like there's never really a debate, or it lasts for a very short time. Like you get 10 minutes of debate, and then the rest is kind of just either, you know, skirting around the points or going off into random tangents.
Or apparently hitting on your guests.
Bubonic for you. Hey, how's it going there? It's an interesting name you have. But yeah, the woman that was on the show, they were talking about the Miss America and how they were going to remove the swimsuit competition because, you know, it's not acceptable in current year, it's outdated, blah, blah, blah. Um, and she had made the argument that it was, you know, it was degrading, it was objectifying to women. And then, you know, a little bit later on, somebody had asked her, "Oh, why do you post, you know, swimsuit photos on your Instagram? Why do you do that?" And her answer was, "Oh, those get more likes." It's like,
Oops.
yeah, how do you not how do you not see that you just destroyed your own argument like 2 minutes later? You can't just be like, "Oh, I'm against objectifying or whatever," and then you use those tactics to manipulate an audience into paying attention to you. Because then you're taking advantage of the thing that you're saying shouldn't exist.
Self awareness. What is that?
Something that appears to be severely lacking. Uh, it's, you know, this is probably my fault for not putting out more of a notification about this, but I always kind of just get a burst of like, "Hey, let's do a stream," and then I just come on without really scheduling it properly. And it is a Saturday, so I have to assume some people have lives, whatever that may consist of these days.
Your boyfriend's wife or something? Whatever. Your wife's boyfriend. I'm sorry.
I hate how games are about throwing shit in people's faces and not about fun. More strong, independent women's that don't need no man. Yeah, that's what we're gonna get into first, and I think we've
I
done enough waiting. But go
I,
ahead.
I would just like to say, since I'm playing a game in the background, I'm actually playing Metroid Prime, which actually features a strong, independent woman. And, you know, that game came out in what, 2001, 2002? And I don't remember there being anything like this back in those days.
Well, I love the timeline of the argument here. So this is from BBC News, so you know you're in for a good time. And it says, at E3, video gaming's bigots have lost. Because apparently, video gaming and bigotry, they kind of go hand in hand, but now they're taking it back.
I wasn't aware that the art of digital entertainment uh, was conducive to bigotry, but
Well, you know what really amazes me is that being a quote unquote gamer used to be the intolerant, you know, the identity that people were not tolerant towards.
and now they can't figure out whether or not they want to be tolerant of it because women should be in it, or if it shouldn't be, if they should not tolerate it because only bigots are into it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So let's take a look here. This one's not too long. 4 years ago, a row hit the games industry like an atomic bomb. Of course, very dramatic. Definitely on the scale of Hiroshima. The treatment of women within both the industry and the games themselves was being scrutinized like never before, and, as journalists predicted, that gamers are over, an angry and at times vicious movement emerged. Gamergate. I really didn't want to be talking about anything Gamergate related this many years after the fact, but these people just won't let it go. They keep it alive. Supporters of Gamergate would say it was about ethics in games journalism. I love that they always put that in quotes as though, that was not the focus. But it was quite openly, more often than not, about something else. Women, minorities, and hatred of so-called social justice warriors, the SJWs, as if social justice was something to be avoided. Because it's not very clear that it is something to be avoided at this point. And I love it. They list women, they list minorities. So who do you have left that is involved in Gamergate? Well, it's got to be the straight white man. Even though we're about to go on to mention something interesting here. It was a row that would it was a row that would go on to consume lives and careers, creating celebrities of the likes of Milo Yiannopoulos, a gay man. Gamergate was a dress rehearsal for what we refer to today as the alt-right. Okay, so now Gamergate evolved, if you didn't know. It started off, and then as we went along, it came into its final form, the alt-right.
Didn't realize that gaming was a Pokemon.
Yeah, so, all the women that were supportive of Gamergate, all of the quote-unquote POCs that were supportive of it, they turned alt-right, because that totally makes sense for their interests. I'd been at E3 in June 2014, just before Gamergate really took hold, and in summing up that year's show, I concluded that the industry still had a problem with women, despite a new momentum and demands for progress. He linked to his write-up, and I'm almost curious as to what he wrote, but I feel like it's just going to be pretty dumb. And the reason for that is because before 2014, there were still video games that had, female protagonists, so I always hate it when they treat it like it's a new thing. The show's
I'm
lowest...
playing one.
Yeah, the show's lowest moment was in learning that year's new Assassin's Creed game would have 4 playable characters, all of them male. Oh no, it's the lowest moment in history. Assassin's Creed, all male characters. Terrible. The following year, 2015, I went back to E3. I was curious to see how the industry would react, yet despite the fire and fury online, it felt as if absolutely nothing had changed. It's almost like the internet and real life are two separate things, and usually what you see in one isn't necessarily reflective of the other.
In this case, not at all reflective of the other.
Yeah, crazy idea, I know. I wondered, what were the games companies doing? Were they afraid? Were they conflicted? Had they even been listening? Probably not. I mean, basically what they're doing is checking their wallets. A friend in the gaming industry took issue with my view. Games take time, he told me. Let's see where we are in a few years. Setting a benchmark. Okay, E3 2018, and I'm standing in a makeshift wooden town hall erected by Sony for its bombastic PlayStation showcase event. Sony's biggest franchise is The Last of Us, a PlayStation exclusive, and a title that many consider to be the finest video game ever made. Really? I mean, I don't think it's a horrible game, but the finest ever made? Come on, that's out there.
And the only people I know that felt that way were journalists.
Yeah. In the original, you play Joel. He's escorting Ellie, a teenage girl, through the game. In the new game, The Last of Us Part 2, Ellie is the lead, and as the trailer commences, we see her dancing slowly with a woman, her girlfriend, and they exchange a passionate kiss. The crowd cheered, not like excitable schoolboys seeing two girls make out, but like adults who had followed Ellie's story and cared about the outcome. Because he could differentiate between the cheers, I guess?
He's got superpowers.
That's very good. By the way, the kiss thing, not even having anything to do with the character's orientation, it was just kind of awkward. I mean, the sound effects that they used, maybe they were real sound effects. Like maybe they actually had two people kissing to capture it, but it just sounded so sloppy and disgusting.
So they were going for accuracy then.
I guess. I think they were trying to make it clear to people that this is what they're about, said Julian Rizzo Smith, a gay games journalist from Australia, whom I bumped into after the event. I bet he bumped into him. I think it was really setting a benchmark for what their future plans are. It's a perfectly fine reflection of society. If you have a problem that it's the biggest game of the show, that's on you. So, The Last of Us, a game that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world overtaken by fungus zombies, is reflective of society.
Clearly.
I quit. We can all go home now. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Sony doesn't stand alone in this. Microsoft, with its Xbox, also used one of its biggest titles this year, Gears 5, to make a statement. See, that's the problem. They're not just presenting games anymore. They're making a statement with their games. For the first time in the franchise, the lead character will be a woman, the ferocious Kate. And Kate has a really annoying spelling here. You know, just to put the icing on the cake.
I'm afraid to ask. Is it like C-A-I-T?
It's K-A-I-T. Like, can't we just have K-A-T-E? Come on. Felt like a natural way to pivot the franchise a little bit, said developer Rod Ferguson, and allow you to actually play the true hero of the story, the powerful woman. No, it doesn't say that, but because that's what they're saying. Predictably, the decision raised some ire from certain corners of the gaming community. Yes, very predictable. But it's not predictable at all for them to put up characters as tokens to say, oh, we're making a statement.
Which they had already done in the Gears of War series, as I understand it. They had, because I remember a review where it was like, oh, and in this Gears of War, we learned that women can also be one-dimensional characters.
So I guess they weren't very happy with the turnout there.
No, but how soon we forget 2011.
It's amazing that Microsoft and the Coalition decided to take the most testosterone-driven, male-centric, third-person shooter brand on the market and still find some way to inject it with third-wave feminism, wrote the One Angry Gamer blog decrying the diversity agenda in games. So I like this. I like how he calls it.
So wasn't Metroid Other M a third-person shooter?
Yeah, I mean, I guess but it's male. It's not male-centric. I don't know. So, but you notice here that they labeled the One Angry Gamer website as a blog instead of a website that's trying to be a games journalist website. I mean, whether you think they're good or not, that's not the point. But they just call it a blog.
It'll be a blog until they need an E3 pass.
We're in 2018, across town at an event hosted by EA. There's a line of people baking under the LA. I don't care about this. Okay, getting a chance to play Battlefield 5. For the first time, players will be able to play as a woman in that big. Is that true? I don't know. Let's see. Does anybody know in the chat if Battlefield 5 is the first time that there's going to be a woman, or is it just the first time that there's going to be a female lead? Because that, there's a difference.
Yeah, because I don't know. I haven't played the series, so I don't know. But
so I'm just looking over the chat real quick. Fun dies when ideologues feel like they need to save the world. Yeah, through video games apparently. My dog's name is Samus. True story. Good choice. Good choice. The Les of Us better have scissoring mode. Oh, Samus was the first female action hero way back from NES, well before Lara Croft. When did Metroid come out? 86?
Yeah, so that was the same time that other game where it was presumably lesbians. That Famicom game.
I forgot what it was called now that I need the title of it, but I looked it up like last week.
So it's whichever one of those came out first.
I like how people treat homosexuality as anything more than a mental issue now. The only female lead I like is Lara Croft in the new game. She fights like a woman, not like a superhero. Hey, what's up? Hey, how's it going? Winter Fresh. I think you and I are the last ones left that get that while they refuse to state it's a mental issue, they still psych journal articles yearly pointing out homo mental disorder issues. What exactly are you referring to there? I'd be curious to know. I don't mind lesbians in games, but trans characters like in Mass Effect Andromeda felt really off. Yeah, that's a little weird. I heard that people weren't happy with it anyway because it came off as,
Well,
awkward and forced.
I know in Mass Effect it couldn't be any more ham-fisted how they kept bringing it up, like, oh, I had a husband, I had a husband, I had a husband. Okay, we get it. What does that have to do with anything? My husband is dead. Yeah, okay. If your husband is dead and you still care about him, why are you hitting on Commander Shepard?
I saw somebody that had Fem Shep in their bio, and I'm guessing that's a reference to that.
Maybe we'll
I don't
never
know.
know. I'll never know because I'm
Let's
not
see.
gonna.
When news of the new game was published online, a backlash ensued, with some fans left incensed that adding women into the game would not be historically accurate. A hashtag not my battlefield was born. Was it really? That's funny. I mean, I think hashtags are dumb, but it was pretty entertaining because, and the reason I say that is because this is the very thing that these people would do if they felt something unjust was happening in a game that they liked. But now, just
Yeah,
because it's oh, they're against the women's, it's a bad thing. So the historically accurate argument is kind of an interesting one to me because the reason being is that usually the argument that I personally go by is these people are always arguing for realism in games or reflections of society and whatnot, and usually I'm like, okay, but it's a fictional world. It doesn't necessarily have to live up to that. I guess you could argue that if Battlefield was initially supposed to be a historically accurate game, which I don't know, I've never played it, then you'd have some sort of an argument to stand on because they're changing it from what it originally was intended to be. But in general, if it's fantasy, should be able to take it wherever, and it shouldn't necessarily have to be just like the real world.
well, I know one of them was definitely supposed to be based on World War I, so that one is definitely more historical fiction than a fantasy or fantasy game set in a time similar to whatever period.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that would probably be the caveat. If it was intended to be initially, and then they're kind of just like, well, it's 2018 and we need to do this, then it's a little bit stupid. The makers of the game were pretty unequivocal in their response. We don't care what they think. No, they care more about virtue signaling. So let's all see how that plays out for them, because I'm really curious. It didn't really work very well with comic books.
And it hasn't really worked all that well for video games
No.
thus far.
I think there's a part of the community that believes that this game has been about historical accuracy, but it has never been about that, said Oscar Gabrielson, general manager at Game Studio Dice. It's a bit disheartening, oh boy, that we're in 2018 and we have this kind of conversation about females in games. But see, they're conflating that just because somebody says, okay, it's not really historically accurate to have a woman here, that suddenly becomes, we don't want women in video games at all. Because I've seen people point out alternatives to having a woman on the battlefield in the Battlefield game. They were like, okay, women were obviously involved to an extent, so why can't we have them in the game in those roles? Or they brought up some Russian sniper that had a ton of kills and it was a female. So, I mean, there are ways that it could be included and not be this kind of pandering thing that it comes off as. And the thing is, even if that wasn't their objective now, the fact that so many companies have done this whole virtue signaling thing, now whenever they do something like this, it always comes off as trying to pander. So they kind of ruined it for themselves.
Yeah, well, the ones I think that are legitimately trying to depict something You typically don't hear about those. Like
Yeah,
I
they
remember there was one game that I think was supposed to be like uh, based heavily on medieval West Africa or something like that, and you don't hear anything about that game.
which is interesting because these people are always clamoring about diversity. So you'd think that would be one that they would pick up and be like, "Hey, look at this."
Well, no, because we all know that it's really just, hey, can you make this existing? Everybody wants somebody else to go and do the work, but when somebody is actually doing something interesting, that's not something that they care about. They want something that everybody can point to that it is the laziest route to get them to think that they've hit progress.
Yeah, basically
Right.
they're trying to co-opt other people's popularity, and that just makes people angry. It doesn't make you look endearing or, sympathetic. It just kind of makes you look like a thief that you can't do something of your own that can get anywhere.
I
So,
mean, because you have these so-called managers of these studios or whatever, and somehow magically they never seem to have done their homework well enough to understand that hey, this existed sometime along before, so we're not really doing anything interesting. And when you do have something like that, such as Kingdom Come Deliverance, oh boy, did they get mad. They being games journalists.
the threat of boycotts is not of concern, Mr. Gabrielson told me later. The gaming industry, with its more than 2 billion players, is more than big enough to handle an online campaign calling for the game to be avoided. Among
You
those,
see, I,
yeah,
I
go
I
ahead.
hate when they say things like that, or like, oh, there are 2 billion gamers. Yes, they're, but here's the problem: they're counting people that play like Angry Birds and mobile games and stuff
Candy
like that.
Crush.
Yeah, this is when you say 2 billion, you're not limiting it to consoles or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of a big blanket. And I mean, I don't play games like these. So, I mean, I'm not technically, I'm in the 2 billion, but I'm not. Among
I mean,
these among those lining up to play the game, we see no signs of the discontent that had been expressed online. Just play it and suck it up, suggested one young woman, of course, but she would never do the same if was told to do that. So, on the E3 show floor, the only women I see in skimpy outfits are fans who have decided to dress as characters, not models paid to attract men to a booth. Somehow
so I
that's
guess
okay. I
so I
like
guess Mental Jess wasn't there.
no. Opening this show up to the general public, as they did for the first time last year, has made the clientele at E3 look a lot more like the gaming community in the US, where women make up 45% of players. Here we go with that percentage again, which probably includes mobile games. Female leads are everywhere on the show floor this year, including the original female lead, Tomb Raider's Lara Croft, who has been far more realistically proportioned of late. Did he really?
She's the original female lead, and
Wow, that's fucking bullshit. This is why I wish these people would not do this, would not write about things like this, because they clearly don't have a clue what they're talking about. And they make themselves look stupid, so even if they did have an argument, it's going to be dismissed by people that actually understand and know the so called history. Let's see. The new title is playable here. You load up the game. The developers display a short passage of text. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was. Oh, wow. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was created by a diverse and talented team comprised of multiple genders, two, backgrounds, ethnicities, religious beliefs, and personalities, it reads. You mean just like any other video game ever? I mean, come on.
uh, Ubisoft already does that. I don't know if you played an Ubisoft game, but whenever you would play Assassin's Creed, they would always start the game off with that disclaimer. Like this game was made by multiple people, multiple religions and genders and ethnicities. Like I don't care.
It doesn't matter. Did they make a good game? That's the question. Did they make something that is engaging and entertaining and quite possibly, even a little bit meaningful in some way? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me to focus on that kind of stuff. And here we go. The next little part here, beyond tokenism, which they just did in the disclaimer. 4 years ago, the games industry was at a crossroads. It could have doubled down on what it knew best, Macho tough guys blasting the heck out of each other, avoiding threats of boycott and accusations of giving in to the social justice warriors. But instead, it took a path that has led to where we are today, with bold moves to add strong female characters front and center in the lineup. Even Assassin's Creed, which had that foul up in 2014, of having male characters.
Assassin's Creed had a game. The game I was referring to where I saw that I got in 2012, and it had a female lead. Not only that, it was a half black woman, the daughter of a slave master and a slave.
Jeez.
In New Orleans, Louisiana. You can't tell me they didn't bother to do the research.
Yeah, and I guess apparently when they came out with the next in the series, they weren't allowed to have male characters, even though they had already obviously had females available. You can now choose to play as a man or woman from the outset. Yippee. But what about the multiple genders? No complaints there. What's of note here is that these games have moved beyond tokenism, with publishers instead taking the view that angering a small section of the gaming community is a price worth paying in order to better reflect the rest, which I think is they're kind of reversing the audience there.
Yeah, because what they're doing is they're acting like those they're pleasing are going to buy the games in the first place, which they're never going to. That type, if they play games, are going to play like Kingdom Hearts or something anyway, which is not diverse in any way, and Square Enix has no interest in doing so, but they're still going to buy that.
Yeah, it's pretty much a lost cause. They won't learn until it affects them financially, and even then, who knows? They might take the virtue signaling down in flames. Checking in with go ahead.
Well, it is affecting them financially to some extent, because it's as they keep trying to do these virtue signaling messages, the sales go down.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear it. People are tired of the same crap, because in an ordinary person's mind, they've already been in this world where it's just normal to have female characters, because these guys, they go back to 2014 and they act like that was the first, or I'm sorry, they go to 2015 and act like that was the first time that there were female leads. And then to say Lara Croft is the original female hero, you ignore so many other characters that came before that, which is should be more offensive.
The most offensive thing is, you would think when you hear video games that Nintendo would be synonymous with video games. So you missed a Nintendo character that's a female.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably one of their most popular franchises. I mean, it hasn't. I mean,
there sure
lately,
are enough. There sure are enough land whales trying to dress up as Zero Suit Samus. So I can't imagine that nobody's ever heard of Samus before.
Yeah, except for what was that one guy, Matt something?
I don't remember his last name, but yeah.
Yeah, he's a little jerk. I forgot what his name is. Unfortunately, chat may not know, so. Checking in with what's left of the Gamergate movement these days finds little discussion about ethics in gaming or games journalism. As I type this, topics on one of the movement's most popular forums, which he doesn't name, revolves around anger over the imprisonment of far-right figure Tommy Robinson. I mean, wow, who would imagine that, a guy getting arrested for basically filming outside of a court case would spark some outrage. Female Wikipedia editors, and how the left has supposedly infiltrated the games industry, and by extension everything else too. So I like the supposedly qualifier here, because this whole article was basically, posturing about the it's 2018, we need representation, and then they want to act like it doesn't exist.
And then on top of that, they want to introduce all of these things that have nothing to do with anything. Like okay, they said, oh, people aren't talking about ethics anymore. Oh, they absolutely are, because all they have to, but there hasn't been a scandal yet that's led them to really talk about it en masse, but they are essentially talking about the same. Their whole complaint when it comes to ethics in game journalism is, I think it eventually converges to propaganda. And so they, at this point, they've kind of just, well, let's, anything we think is propaganda, let's go and complain about it. And that's exactly what they're doing, which is exactly what they're doing. And my problem here is that they seem to think that the average person that's going to buy a game is even paying attention. Like they're not watching E3. They're not reading any game blogs or anything like that. They're just going to the store and they're like, oh, here it is. So the people that you are in fact alienating are more, like you said, more than likely the majority and not the minority. The minority is not like the minority just loves to feel like a victim, but the I mean, the person that's going to buy the majority of games isn't paying attention to either side anyway. Whether they would consider themselves on one side or the other, or the obnoxious centrist position, they're not aware of any of this. So there's not really any progress being made at all. Nobody cares. They just, oh, does this look interesting? Do I want to play this?
Yeah, basically they don't need politics surrounding their hobbies in order to validate their hobby, because you could just go to the store, buy a game, and go home and play it. It doesn't require any of this garbage.
But as they do more of this as they spread more of this propaganda and do more virtue signaling in places where these people are, then they'll start to be more irritated, and then yeah, then those people definitely aren't going to buy it, and then you're really going to lose more money than you already have been.
So the last
Because
little bit, what were once referenced to as the thinly veiled elements of Gamergate are now fully visible, but it no longer matters. As I leave Los Angeles with another E3 behind us, it's clear that the Gamergate way of thinking has lost. The industry has stepped up, and video games will be all the better for it. So, got to
the
declare
thing is
victory.
the industry was never in danger of adopting that mindset, because guess what? The industry has everything to gain from corruption. And so the whole concern over ethics in games journalism, I don't think that any of these publishers were ever concerned, because guess what? They are contributing to it. They're the ones that play the system. They're the ones that buy positive review scores.
Yeah, I'll give you this, special edition, and you write me this review.
So I don't think EA and all those guys were ever in danger of being pro Gamergate.
Yeah, so that kind of goes into the thing that you showed me, where um, they basically have a history every time an E3 rolls around of doing this. So, this year we have at E3, video gaming's bigots have lost, but in 2015, and I remember this article when it came out, uh, diversity, the big winner at E3, and that's June 16th, 2015. Women in games take center stage at press conferences. So, to act like they still act like it's a problem, and every time we get to a new show, they act like it's the first time. And they just spark the same stupid outrage, beat the same drum over and over and over.
Well, that's basically the whole joke behind the current year thing, is that, well, that's one joke, at least from what I see, is that, oh, well, apparently this thing didn't exist before. Like you said, he seems to think Laura Croft is the first original female lead, and I'm sure whoever's already corrected him on that, he's going to find some sort of way to make something up and say, oh, well, I meant from a third party.
Yeah. And even then, he'd be beyond wrong. I mean, Final Fantasy, there's Breath of Fire, so many different ones that you could name that had female characters.
Well, I'm sure he's going to say lead. So Final Fantasy definitely would be the case. I would argue that Seiken Densetsu 3 could fit that mold, because you can choose
You could
three.
choose, yeah.
I think you can choose six characters, and two or three of them are female. So yeah, three are female, three male, three female.
There you go.
But
Narrative history.
that would be somebody who actually plays video games and enjoys them. So obviously not him.
basically not people that want to use video games as a method to spread their ideology rather than an entertainment medium.
Well, I think the reason that this is happening so much, part of it is that, there was that whole argument earlier this decade about are video games art?
Yeah, I remember that.
And once you allow people to say yes, they are, that makes it easier to say, well, this is somebody's message, and they're trying to make this kind of statement rather than this person's trying to make something that people will want to play and spend money on.
Yeah.
And because and so what, it was a double-edged sword to say that that video games are art, but I think once gamers at least were of that belief that yes, they are art, it makes it easy for somebody to say, well, then we can treat it like art. But the only problem is they still don't, because it's like art can be something you don't like. It's art. You don't have to like everything you see, but I guess in this day and age, they think, they're all hipsters and liberal arts majors. So to them, whatever art that they would see has to be something that they would like, because only, they think only liberal elite would ever be artists. They would ever get involved in that. Nobody else would. No conservative would be an artist, and if they did, then they would probably scoff and laugh and say something about religion or some other nonsense, like, oh, they're only showing like creationism or whatever dumb stuff they say. I don't have time to remember every dumb talking point they give out, but that's what I expect that they would do. That would be how they would handle that situation. But that is essentially what I see kind of being the consequence of the whole video games are art and not merely entertainment. Because I think the same thing happened with movies. Once they started, I think movies that debate was not nearly as long lasting. It kind of took a little bit of time for movies to transition to the third gender and be considered art. And I feel like around that time that happened, they were using it as a vehicle to promote ideologies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily have a problem with games having some sort of message, but it feels like when they make that the focus, that is when it goes wrong. And I, I think the way that they do it is really it's just too obvious. It's not subtle. There's no underlying theme. It's like right there slapping you across the face with a big diverse dick. And there's no getting away from it. There's no room anymore for kind of having your own interpretation.
Yeah, and even in games that I am not a fan of, they used to do that, and now it just feels like you don't see that at all anymore.
Yeah, I mean, especially I guess it's really I should say it's really the AAA ones. There's still smaller
They
games
do
out
they
there that kind
they
of do
do it
it.
with indie games. They do it with indie games too. Remember that one game that Anita Sarkeesian praised, where it was a female character or something,
Oh, and it
and
was the
she,
graphics. It looked like I don't know, a stick figure with a duck's head or something.
yeah,
I forgot what that was
looked.
even called.
I don't remember
Something
either.
about maybe it was like sword or something. It had a weird name, and they made the spelling stupid to be different, but it just looked kind of dumb to me. I don't know. Maybe somebody will know what it was called. Wouldn't some Bubonic said, wouldn't Mrs. Pac-Man be the first female character to be technical? I mean, I that came out quite a while ago, right? So that might be.
Yeah, if it came out before '86, then it did. Then it would be. I'm sure there's probably one before that. I just I can't remember every video game with a female lead. It's almost like there are just too many to memorize.
Almost, yeah. Miss Pac-Man don't need no man. Definitely not. So okay, we're almost off the video game topic because I feel like it's like beating a dead horse, but they just keep coming back to it, and I keep seeing these ridiculous statements So the last one that I just want to take a look at real quick is one of the Naughty Dog developers, and he decided to go on a little tirade here. And his thing was, if you're so socially and culturally inept that the option to play a video game as a female gets you all worked up in a frothy nerd rage, my name is Boone. What really dumb name, your parents probably did not love you. I make games, but not for people like you. Your kind is done, mate. Do everyone a favor and fuck off. You're embarrassing.
I know it's a UK Australia thing, but I hate when somebody says mate.
Yeah, this guy actually is Australian, apparently. I saw his bio. He's also a homo. He said it, not me.
Like, I'm not your mate, so please stop calling me that.
But this your kind thing, I mean, where have we heard statements like that before?
You know, maybe it's just me as a black man, but I sure feel like when I was the only person of my pigmentation in certain places, I think that's when I heard it. When they said that they didn't want my kind around here.
Some guys driving by in a pickup truck with some white hoods, you know, maybe a couple crosses in the back or something. Yeah, that sounds familiar. So yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. He has the nerve to call other people embarrassing when he's here basically pointing to what is probably a very, very small percentage of people. I don't think I've ever legitimately met somebody that has had a problem that female characters exist. So I almost feel like this is made up, but just given the scope of the amount of people in the world, maybe you could find a few of them. And the way that this is framed, you would think every other person is just this socially awkward nerd rage gamer that can't handle the fact that female characters exist. And that's not true at all. Then he goes on. Let's see here. Okay, so this I thought you could find hypocrisy already. You go a little bit further down his feed from a couple of days ago. He says, my feed right now is just an endless wall of joy for that kiss. I can't begin to put into words how overwhelming the emotion is, how much pride I feel to be working on a AAA game with a gay central character, and it's the sequel to my favorite game of all time. I'm wrecked. Yeah, just like after your boyfriend gets done with you. But listen, this is...
You know, I have to say, because I think somebody said they used the likeness of Ellen Page or something for that character.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think anybody who knows the history of that game probably isn't even surprised.
No, I think there's... in the first one, I believe there is kind of an allusion to the fact that she's gay. They might outright state it. I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't play through the whole thing, but my sister has played it multiple times, and you know, I've caught big portions of the story that way. So, yeah, it's not a secret. I don't think many people that have actually played the game are surprised by any means, but it amazes me that he can say something like this just a few days ago, and then come out and say this whole thing about, you know, oh, we have so much support, and then it turns to, oh, everybody is against this. Like, what are you doing? People can read your feed. Do you not realize that the scroll is an option here? I mean, make up your mind. Do you have endless support? Or do you have people angry and bashing you over it? I realize you can have both, but the way that he's framing it would lead you to believe that there's, you know, not much support.
Yeah, that's what they always do. They go and they change the parameters for their own narrative. At first, everybody was supportive, and now there are a bunch of bros or whatever they call them on their feed harassing them, and they have to go run away. And why can't we be more diverse or something?
Yeah, so I found another post of his. In this one, I believe he was talking about his sexual orientation. But if you put this again up against what he was saying about the so-called nerds, it's very eye-opening. It just says, I chose to share this because some threads showed up on my timeline arguing who gets to use the queer label. That kind of gatekeeping is counterproductive. We are all weird and wonderful in our predilections, and we are stronger in numbers. Inclusiveness works both ways. And then, put that right right up next to your kind is done. Fuck off. Gatekeeping. What? Inclusive? What's that? Never ends. Never ends and never fails.
Hypocrisy is always going to come by. You're always going to find it. They're always going to use it.
It just turns into a matter of convenience, and I think that that's the part that pisses me off. And I'm not even necessarily against the concept of gatekeeping, because I know that sounds bad, but what I mean is, like, you have this label, so obviously there are standards required to be part of that label. You know, it makes no sense to even have the label if everyone is included by default. But so him having gatekeeping tendencies isn't my issue. The issue is that he pretends to be against it, but then uses it when it's convenient.
Well, that sounds about right. It comes down to it's okay when I do it every time.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty obnoxious, and I get very tired of it very, very quickly. Just let me take a look here at the chat before we move on to the next topic. Female protagonists are fine, in my opinion. Yep, I mean, there's no issue. The issue has always been, is a character well written? Is the story that they are a part of well written? Is the gameplay good? I mean, things that are important for a video game.
Fun factor, replayability, interesting storyline.
There's gay stuff in the DLC. Okay, in the DLC, she kissed a black girl. Wow, diversity. There you go.
Apparently, she's not a very faithful one, so they're doing what they're. Is this a poly situation?
I think the girl probably died.
Oh yeah, she did. I think she did.
I almost feel like that was a complaint to some people. It was one of those you're using a gay story for tragedy kind of deals.
That certainly happened here, because they're like, okay, or my wife was like, okay, why are they making a big deal? Like, if she died, then what was the point of that? Like, what's the point of celebrating that? Then they just kill her off? I don't know. Doesn't sound very 2018 friendly.
Not at all. I don't really want to get too much into this one, especially the whole political angle, but this Salon post was just absolutely ridiculous, where it was basically saying, I mean, the headline alone says it: cut Trump supporters off. The horror of migrant kids taken from parents demands personal action. Personal action is necessary. Do not give aid and comfort to the Trump supporters in your lives. Now, these are the people that say you need empathy, you need understanding, but also leave people that voted for someone I don't like for dead. And they frame it in a very manipulative way. It's a whole, think of the children argument. But what they do is they always use that very manipulative language where they'll say things like, undocumented residents. Destroy the families of refugees. Undocumented residents. It's like, look, I mean, does that suck for people sometimes? Yeah, people getting into unfortunate situations. They get desperate. They do things that are against the law to, get out of it. But that's not that story doesn't apply to everybody that does that. And they always try to do this whole emotional thing. And what I can't wrap my head around is, even if you felt sorry for these people, that doesn't really warrant cutting off your friends and family. Like, how could you care about complete strangers that you don't know more than your friends and family? And I honestly don't believe that the people that are posturing the hardest about this and how much they care about the children and all that, I don't believe they care at all. I think they care about using them to make other people look bad. Because they're not out there doing anything for these kids. They're not out there trying to do anything. They're sitting on social media calling other people bigots because of who they voted for.
Yeah, I certainly don't see them becoming immigration lawyers.
Yeah, it's, it's absurd to me. And like I said, it drives me nuts that they're like, oh yeah, basically just leave your friends and family for dead if they need help. Nobody cares about them because they did something I don't like. So that's perfectly okay. But people that want, legal immigration to be followed are the terrible people. It drives me insane. That was pretty much just a little tiny rant on that. So if you don't have anything more to add, I will move on from that because
No,
that just
I don't.
drives me crazy. Basically, don't look if somebody is not personally mistreating you, you don't have to cut them out of your life. Everybody has ideas and opinions that you disagree with. You don't have to let them suffer if you can help them out and you care about them. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, especially when it's just for the idea that somehow you doing that is helping complete strangers. It isn't. Everybody suffers. So,
but think of the children. I mean, I there are people I've seen personally do that, and it's like, okay, well, you do understand that if they're committing a crime, they get arrested, they would be separated from their kids. Are you now saying you want children to be in the jail cell with them?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I mean, I guess I am kind of sure what their goal is because they use terms like undocumented residents, which is just so dumb. This is the last one for the evening, and I think it's probably going to take up the majority of the time. So the show is not ending just yet, but let's go here to the chat real quick. And because straight love was never used for tragedy. No, never at all. I don't remember any tragic love stories with straight people.
Yep. There's no such thing as Romeo and Juliet.
I read this article. It's so long and so fucked up. Yeah, I kind of skimmed it before. You're talking about the Trump one. Never mind. I'm talking about the one I have on the screen currently. My bad. Yeah, the article outright says all Trump supporters and Republicans are evil. Yeah, it does. That's the new phrase, undocumented residents. You think borders should exist, Nazi? Oh, there we go. The pixelated games you guys mentioned that Anita Sarkeesian heaped praise on is Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery. Yeah, I remember. I think they spelled sorcery weird or something like that in the title. Yeah, my wife's boyfriend. Yeah, here we go. This is going to be a fun ride.
As a married man, I want to see if I can relate to any of this.
I have a feeling that you will find this is not really reflective of your reality at all. But let's see. My boyfriend.
But we need to be open-minded, so
yeah. We'll try. My boyfriend, my husband, and me. Okay, let's see. Married Women is a column that explores how women are redefining the rules of matrimony because,
it's women who are redefining it.
Yeah, marriage is a women-only thing. They get to determine what is and is not.
Well, marriage in their ideas has been traditionally oppressive, and so it only makes sense now that women have control, they should be able to define what it is so that it isn't oppressive for them anymore.
Yeah, I suppose that is their line of thought. Let's get into the story. Rob and I were together for 12 years before we decided to open our marriage. Red flag already. It happened.
Well, I can't. This will be one of the longest 12-year divorces ever.
Yeah, it happened not that long after we had our last child. For most of our relationship, I'd been very focused on my career and then motherhood, without much time to think about my sex life. Once we were done having kids, my sex drive came roaring back. I am woman, hear me roar. We loved each other very much, but we'd never been a perfect match in terms of sexual compatibility. Here it goes. I told him that I didn't think our marriage was big enough for my new sexual curiosity. I wanted to explore. Rob was very receptive. Cock-a-doodle-doo. But we wanted to take things slowly. We read all the books on non-monogamy, did a lot of talking and negotiating. Both of us were fully on board. They did their research, okay? They took a college course, Non-monogamy 101, and they passed, okay?
Yeah, they got a 79.
I think it's important for me to say that by this time, Rob and I had already been talking about alternative living. I hate these terms so much. Just so much.
I think alternative living is called death.
I'd always been interested in communes, and we had joined a co-housing group, the kind of place where you have your own house or apartment, but where there's shared responsibility for rearing children, assisting with the aged, addressing ecological concerns. That was a huge investment of time and money and taught us a lot of things about how to communicate with one another about hard stuff. It's hard stuff. It taught us how to ask for what we needed without blaming someone for not having given it to us. So that was useful when we became non-monogamous, and none of this was odd to us as it might be to others.
In other words, she wasn't having an orgasm, and there was nothing he wanted either. I'm going to say there's nothing he wanted to do about it, because there's always something you can do about it. It's whether or not you want to.
Yeah, come on, Rob, do the job. What's going on?
So get up, lay off the video games and streaming for once.
Oh boy, that hits close to home. We were also primed for it by watching Big Love. It's definitely melodramatic, but we loved the idea of sharing parent. I don't know what that is. Is this some kind of reality show?
Big Love was I believe it was an HBO show about polygamy, as in there was Mormon or LDS polygamy. So
like
not
multiple
quite
wives
the same.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, this is so. But we love the idea of sharing parents and sitting down at a table with your partners with a calendar and making a schedule for the domestic labor.
It sounds extremely gay.
This is like Amish polyamory or something. Scheduling is as much a part of non-monogamy as sex, though sex is what monogamous people tend to focus on when they hear about non-monogamy. Yeah, because you just said earlier on that your reason for wanting to explore was because you had your sexual curiosity was too much for one man to handle.
You didn't have the same sexual personalities, so I guess you're a sexual schizophrenic or something.
Like this is another example of destroying your own argument just moments later. We were very open about what we were doing with everyone, including our kids, who were 4 and 8 at the time.
Because they'll understand.
Definitely. Mom, Dad, why do we have more dads now? We sat down with them and explained that some people think when you're married to someone, you can only love that one person, but that we didn't believe that. We thought you could love more than one person at the same time. Our oldest child thought about it for a moment, then said, well, right, like I love you and I also love Dada. And I said, right. And that was the end of the conversation. Children are naturally very tolerant about these things. We teach them our intolerance. I mean, that's true to an extent, but they just act like there's no standards.
It's more like kids are stupid and they don't know anything. And so if you tell them something and you let them come to a conclusion like that was the most obvious setup for that. Like, oh, well, you know, you love your both of your parents.
Yeah.
So you didn't bother explaining this is not even the same kind of love.
Right. I mean, that's weird. You usually, you know, from what I've seen, a parent will be like, okay, but that's not the same type of, there's different kinds of love. There's the love you have for, you know, your mom or your dad, your brother, your sister. And then there's the kind that you have for somebody that you're in a relationship with. But no, we'll just gloss over that because this justifies what we're doing. Anyway, both of us started dating. Rob began dating a woman pretty seriously, and I was seeing Mike, whom I'd first met in my 20s. So, wait a second. He couldn't deal with whatever the hell his wife was going through, but he's out dating another woman seriously?
Notice how she said she'd already known that guy. That says everything.
Yeah, who I first met in my 20s. This sounds like one of those Facebook things rekindled.
Yeah.
It had a passion.
Or it'd been going on for a long time, and she wanted to have an affair, but she'd have to feel guilty. So
you don't have to admit it now. You could just say, "Oh, well, we opened the marriage. It's okay." We'd had a passionate but brief relationship while living on opposite coasts. We had since fallen out of touch. Now he was living 5 hours away, and we began a long-distance relationship where I'd see him every month or two for a couple of days. After about 2 years of long-distance dating and getting to know our whole family, Mike decided to move to our town to be close to us. He was divorced and had no kids and a job he could do from anywhere. So you go from getting divorced to accepting far less?
Sloppy seconds.
Oh boy. When he first moved, he rented an apartment a few blocks away, and the idea was he'd live there for a year or more, and we'd see how it went. But it became almost immediately apparent that it just didn't make sense, because he and I wanted to spend every night together, and he was eating all his meals with us. So we all decided he should just move in. I think this is weird just because, I mean, there's kids involved, and you move a strange man into the house. Like, what if he was just, I mean, I'm going off on speculation here, but what if it was you're inviting like a child molester into your home?
Oops.
All because you are selfish and care more about your own personal needs than the needs of your family. It's like, why even get into this situation if you're not willing to make the normal sacrifices necessary to have those things? Just because, like, these people want it all.
Yes, the cliche, they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yes. Rob and Mike got along well from the start, not like best friends, but they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Gay. If I wasn't home, they'd watch basketball or make dinner together. Oh, I was right. They wouldn't turn to each other if they were in crisis. For that, they'd turn to me, but they got along well. Of all the questions people ask me about non-monogamy, the one I get the most is probably about the living arrangement. People want to know why Mike got to live with us, while none of the people Rob dated got to. That seems like such a silly way to look at it. Or does it? The reasons you do or don't choose to live with a partner are complicated. It's not that Mike got to live with us, it's that it made sense for him to move in. He was getting a divorce, he had no kids, he worked from home. That didn't answer the question, like, at all. Not at all. When Mike first moved in, we decided that he would have the small bedroom on the first floor because it was more private, all the way on the opposite side of the house from the kids' room and the master bedroom. The idea was that Rob and I would keep the master bedroom, but that I could go downstairs and sleep with Mike when I wanted to. Honestly, Rob has always preferred to sleep alone and was happy to have the bed to himself, or so he tells himself. The problem was that our kids were still very young and they'd wake a lot in the night and need me, so it really didn't make sense for me to be all the way downstairs and on the other side of the house. So we all decided that Rob would move into the...
Wait. They wake up a lot during the night and they need you?
Yeah.
That's... Okay, I have children in between those ages. One, they hardly ever wake up in the middle of the night, and therefore they don't need me. So if your kids are getting up in the middle of the night all the time, there's probably a problem.
Yeah, I would imagine it might have something to do with the strange man living in the house, but what do I know? So basically what they're saying is that they moved Dad, good old Rob, down out of the master bedroom and booted him all the way across the house so that Mike and I Am Woman Hear Me Roar here could have the master bedroom. His life is getting smaller as we speak. I also get asked all the time about jealousy. People will say things like, how could any person possibly deal with that? I mean, that's exactly what I'm thinking. The jealousy of having their wife sleep with another man in their own house. They talk about jealousy as though it's this unmovable, immutable force, and not simply an emotion that can be worked through like any other. Okay, except for the emotion of wanting more than one partner, apparently. No, for that we don't have to get past that. We have to give in, move another man in the house, move your husband all the way to the other end. Mm-hmm. Get out of here.
Well, it's because he sleeps better by himself, that's all.
Listen, you can get over jealousy, but it depends on what the cause of the jealousy is. It depends on how willing your partner is to ensure that you don't feel jealous, that they act in a way that, is kind and thoughtful in regards to your feelings. Like, this is ridiculous. You can't get over jealousy if the person that's doing it is your partner and they're doing it they're behaving this way on purpose and you're just supposed to be okay with it. That's how you build resentment.
and that's why this marriage will be dying fairly soon.
We should get a counter. Also, by the time Mike moved in with us, my relationship with Rob was loving, but it was no longer sexual. We both accepted the way our relationship had changed. Rob is
I knew that
also,
was coming.
yeah, Rob is also not a fundamentally jealous person. Of course he's not. This is all very convenient. He never viewed, this is dumb too. He never viewed me as his property just because we were married, or thought that marriage should give him control over who I have sex with. He was also dating and having sex with other women, and to be honest, I'm a pretty intense person. I can be a lot to deal with, and I think in that way he was happy to share me. So, this is just dumb. I mean, this is a dumb argument because you don't have to think of the person as property in order to not want them to have sex with someone else. I mean, the whole point of the relationship is that it's supposed to be like, you know, mutually beneficial to each other. You're supposed to care about each other. It's not about property. It's just about having, you know, understanding a person's needs, understanding their emotions, and not acting in a way that would hurt them emotionally. I mean, I get that they're saying, "Oh, both people here were okay with it," but you know, there are kids involved as well, and you have to take into account the effect that it's going to have on them.
No, no. She wants to be happy, and that's all that matters.
The other
Every
issue, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say everything else is inconsequential.
Yeah,
So I feel sorry for the children here
yeah,
because
and
they
see, isn't this funny? Like we just looked at that other article when they were kind of making the think of the children that we don't even know argument, but here we have children that they know it's their own kids, and we don't have to think of the children now.
no, we don't even have to ask why they keep getting up in the middle of the night.
The other issue besides jealousy that I get asked about a lot is parenting. I think people are generally very uncomfortable with the idea of mothers having sex at all, or enjoying sex or being sexual, but particularly with anyone besides their husband.
Yeah, I saw that boring MPAA documentary too. I don't believe it any more now than when I heard it in that stupid documentary, because it was trying to say, oh well, which is true probably, that female any kind of female satisfaction makes the always drives the ratings up, but it was like, oh, nobody wants to see that, like, no, as a married man, trust me, I want to see my wife satisfied by me. Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
And
Apparently that's
and
necessary in this day and age to make it clear.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, to me, there's nothing inappropriate about that. I'm perfectly happy with that. But apparently, according to whoever made, I can't remember his dumb name, when he didn't turn it into some, like, oh, here are some private investigators uh, who are being oppressed because they're two lesbians and they can't get married or something. What that has to do with ratings and films, I don't know, but he had to shoehorn that in. But when he wasn't talking about that, they were talking about how apparently how people just hate the female orgasm, which, I mean, I don't know who these people are that do, but I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really known anybody like that, but what do I know? So people will say things like, "What about the kids?" as though we were hosting orgies in the dining room before dinner. The reality is that our kids have such a wholesome life. We all sit down to dinner together every day, and they experience a very smoothly running household with 3 adults around taking care of them. I mean, that still doesn't address the inevitable confusion. I was recently telling my son the story of his home birth, and he said, "Where was Mikey?"
Oh boy, no, wait. Home birth. That should tell you everything you need to know about these people. Home birth.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to a hospital. I mean, that's fine if you want to do it, but I mean, it just fits the profile. That's all I'm saying.
We need some veganism in here, too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in there somewhere.
So, where was Mikey? Had to explain to him that Mike wasn't around yet. When my kids play pretend games, they talk about how a certain imaginary creature has green magic beams that shoot out of her fingers and she can fly, and she's polyamorous and non-binary. For them, this is a perfectly normal way of living. What kids even know what those things are at 4 and 8?
Yeah, we sure don't teach them, or they sure don't understand bigotry. We sure do teach that.
Wow, that's. I should also say though that our experience of familiar harmony won't be unusual. Both Mike and Rob are really domestic. I actually don't remember how to use my own dishwasher because I almost never run it. And I can't even tell you the last time I did the. Wow, this is getting really clear as to why this is such a good situation for this person. Can't remember the last time I did the laundry. They both lived with housemates as young adults and thrived on communal living. They're happy to do the dishes in the laundry with me, acting as the crew's director. Most of my monogamous female friends don't know how I got so lucky since their husbands won't even pick up their own clothes. How would adding another person to the relationship fix that particular issue?
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, they just had maids.
And I feel like these are just very nitpicky, stupid situations. Like, oh, you're so lucky because somebody does the dishes in the laundry. Like, talk to your damn husband, lady.
Or if you're us, get your kids to participate.
There you go. Teach some things other than non-binary and polyamory. That said, oh boy, here it comes. That said, I still think I put in the lion's share of emotional labor in a traditionally gendered way. I'm the one who keeps up the kids' doctor's appointments, the meetings at their schools. I delegate, but I'm still the planner. I don't mind, though, because I'm doing a lot less of the other kinds of daily labor. It seems to me that in so many traditional marriages, the woman does almost all the emotional labor, and that she also does more than 50% of the housework and childcare, at least, whereas I do closer to a third. This whole emotional labor argument is really, really dumb. Like, I know, I understand that emotional stress is a thing, but when they call it emotional labor, it really sounds. I just can't take it seriously at all.
I know it sounds manipulative to me. If you call it labor, then people will think, oh, yeah, I guess it is
Yeah,
work.
like
And
why is giving it? I mean, why is giving a shit work? Why is it a problem? I mean, it's work in
and,
the sense that it takes effort, but you're supposed to care about these people. Like that's just what you do. It's like that.
like she makes the idea of motherhood sound very uh, overwhelming and exhausting. Like, okay, well, so is fatherhood.
Yeah,
So
but like welcome to life. Again, it's one of those. You chose this life, and that's just what you get. It's funny when I talk to people who don't want to know that there's an alternative to monogamy. They'll often say, "Oh, it sounds like so much hard work," and I'll say, "Well, is your marriage easy? Here we go." And they say, "No, my marriage is hell." Well, mine never was. It never has been. Take that,
yeah,
monogamous people.
yeah. In your eyes, it isn't.
This is just absolutely ridiculous. Oh, my friends say their marriage is hell, so therefore all marriages are hell. Except for
Like,
mine, because I figured it out.
in the however many years of human existence, why didn't they just practice non-monogamy like I did?
Well,
That whatever.
you know what bothers me is that a lot of these quote unquote alternative living people, not only do they want their freedom to do whatever it is they want to do, which whatever. I mean, I think it's garbage, but you do have the freedom to make stupid choices. But they also have to tear down whatever it is that is considered the norm in society. It's like it's not enough to be able to do what you want to do. You also have to shit on everybody who's doing the thing that you don't want to do.
Well, that's how you validate it.
Well, I feel like if you have to, knock something down in order to make yourself, whatever you're doing, lifted up, then what you're doing is probably crap. Probably doesn't have its own merit to stand on.
No, but then then they would feel bad.
Well, we can't have social norms that make us feel bad. I mean, that's never been a thing. Just, it feels like, not only trying to remove any sense of emotional adversity, like, just come to terms with yourself. You don't have to follow whatever society is supposedly telling you to do. And I would honestly argue that society is telling you not to be monogamous anymore. I mean, it's like test the waters, do whatever you want as long as it feels good. That's the message I see being pushed. And yet, simultaneously, I see the very same type of people usually make arguments that, society's in the shitter, we're all going downhill, but they don't want to address that they're trying to ruin one of the fundamental aspects that built society. Having a solid, stable family goes a long way in how you grow up and what you do.
I'm sure they'll say that any studies that show that were just from right-wing Christian conservatives.
Right, it's the anti-LGBT movements or something.
Yeah.
We're almost through this one, but go ahead.
I said they're inherently biased, but studies are never biased when it's opinions they support.
Yeah, that's the thing that always drives me crazy. Living together worked really well for us for 4 years. Here we go. Here it is. I guess the timer was the end of this article. Recently, Rob decided that it was time for him to get his own apartment, mostly because he wants a little more autonomy, even though he lives right nearby, comes over for dinner most nights. So we decided to divorce. I thought it was working so well. People might get to that point, and say, oh, so I guess non-monogamy didn't work in the end, or I guess it ruined your marriage. Or they think, poor Rob, but Rob dates. He has a life he fully enjoys and chose. He's about to turn 50, and he wanted to feel what it was like to steer his own ship for a while, to have a little more space, and that's what he has. What about his kids? He just left them with another guy.
So did the cuck do the cucking now?
I think it might be. Like, fuck you, Mike. Raise my kids. Mike and I are going to get married soon, and I think people assume that now we'll be monogamous since our relationship is so romantic. But nope. I learned absolutely nothing. We have no interest in a marriage that doesn't provide us space to express and act on attractions to other people and to continue to change and grow. In a funny way, and given the statistics around infidelity, I think we're a lot more committed to non-monogamy than most monogamous people are to monogamy.
You know, it's easy to lower those statistics for infidelity when you just decide, well, it's okay if we have sex with other people. It's like the whole unemployment thing. Like, it's easy to say unemployment is going down when people have just decided to give up looking for work.
This whole thing is bullshit. It drives me absolutely crazy that they'll find any way to justify. And it's like, they didn't really, she didn't focus completely on what they were doing. She always has to throw in these digs like, oh, you could say it didn't work, but we're still more committed to it than you people.
Yeah, we want our freedom and our space.
I mean, what is even the point of getting married again if you're just saying, oh, we're just going to do this open thing and leave things as they are? Nothing's changing.
Yeah, why would you even get into marriage if that's the case?
And I still don't understand the thing about how the father just oh, I'm going to get my own apartment now. I have kids, but who needs them? Mike, hop on that. You're dad now. You take on the role.
Have fun with that. You got to do it, so now it's my turn.
I guess that's equality in the world of polyamory. I want to see what the comments say, just out of curiosity. Wait, where are they? Do they not have comments? Oh, I just got... Maybe I can't... Oh, here we go. I don't know what's wrong with it. Let's see. Can't read past the point where she dates someone she knew in her 20s. I can't see how she wasn't setting this up the whole time. She was just married just to sleep with the one that got away. Yeah. Sounds like Rob is the winner here. What does the divorce look like? He'll be back visiting the family and kids with his 20-year-old girlfriend. Isn't jealousy immutable? No one chooses to be jealous. It's an awful feeling. The fact that I want to put my head through a wall if my partner was having sex with other people doesn't feel like something that would go away. Sounds like she was only having sex with one guy at a time. That seems pretty monogamous. She was just really slow to divorce her first husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty stupid. I think this is just a classic case of rebranding. No one wants to read an article about a couple who grew apart, started seeing other people, and went their separate ways because that's boring. But call it conscious uncoupling or open marriage and the clicks roll in. Yeah, I mean that's probably part of this. I don't know how common crap like this is, but they do have a way of trying to push it to the forefront, and then at the same time it's never enough to just tell the story. They also have to trash on whatever they believe the societal norm is in the process.
Yeah, which, in at least in my case, that makes me kind of rethink when people give these arguments for why whatever they're doing is the right thing, because it's like, okay, you spend so much time trying to justify why you're doing it that I almost think you don't think there's a justifiable reason for it.
And it's funny because she points out, oh, some people, by the time people reach this point of the article, they're going to say, oh, it didn't work out. And she says that as though that's a crazy statement when that's exactly what happened.
It didn't, and you remarried. This really just sounds like you had an affair
For a couple of years, for 4 years.
Yeah, and your husband got tired of it, and he was like, "All right, well, I'm done." Because it's like, oh, you can, like, oh, well, he dated and brought people in. How come you never mentioned them by name?
That is true. And that's another thing that I kind of wanted to point out was that when you hear these stories, it's always a woman with multiple partners. It's never the other way around.
Because I honestly think most women are not going to really be that into a guy who's like, well, I'm in an open marriage.
No,
Like,
not at all.
even though that may sound no strings attached, I think a lot of them don't believe that that's really something that can happen. And since we want to talk about emotional labor, I'm sure part of it has to do with the fact that they either think, well, this could be me, or the wife could be jealous and crazy, and as soon as he's happy without her, she's going to be intensely jealous, and she's not going to simply have a discussion about it or whatever she said they did.
No, somebody's penis will be cut off and flushed down a toilet or thrown out a car window, something.
Yeah, and then we'll get some more Yas Slay Queen.
And it's totally justified because he was a cheater, even though the relationship was supposedly open. Yeah. Okay, so that was pretty funny. Let's see what the chat thinks of this wonderful story about a man who took on the plot twist there and made some other man raise his children. He reverse cucked.
Yeah, that's probably the interesting thing to me.
Okay. Wow, we had a lot here. Let's see.
And it's only a matter of time before Mike leaves.
Yeah, he's gonna find a new girlfriend too. Cucks
because he's not gonna want to sit there and raise the kids. So.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Cucks should be moved to a concentration camp. Think about the children we are exposing them to. They might take after. That's what I said about gay parades way back when. I cringe every time I see that pride flag plastered to people's face. That thing is so stupid. Can't hate, though, because that's bad for you. Eats at you and consumes you. I more have an apathy for them. I think she just wanted to control the situation. Is this satirical? Sadly, no. I won't give them my hate. They don't deserve that kind of attention or energy. No, you're right. They don't. I just find that I think the terminology is just kind of obnoxious. I don't know if that was probably what that was addressing.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the one commenter said, it's a rebranding.
Yep.
My wife's boyfriend. That's how I look at it. Like, you're just rebranding something. Because, I mean, I've heard of open marriages before, and I've always thought they were stupid. Like, why get married then?
Bet she threatened the worst divorce ever, and he cucked. What a fag. Their relationship isn't a sexual one, is an emotional one. Nice. Is the husband's name Zeph? Yeah, I think so. I don't think she's going to be happy when Jamal giving her HIV. I feel sorry for masculinity. Yeah, masculinity is over. Remember, it's like gamers are dead.
Masculinity's been over for a long time. It has not been good to be masculine for at least 5 years.
This cuck has been turned into their maid. It would work if they were both cucks. Emotional labor equals cuck level over 9,000. Emotional labor being a mom. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's like you're just kind of relabeling what you're supposed to do as a parent and calling it emotional labor. It's like, yeah, it's hard to shape another human being's life, but if you're not up to the job, maybe you should have
You
thought about that.
don't get pregnant.
The descent of civilization into degeneracy. I'm not sure that I like this kind of progress. No, see, this is an argument for why not all progress is inherently good. About to turn 50. Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. Like a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. Though I guess by the time of the story, they'd be 8 and 12. Still, 50 is pretty old to have kids that young.
Yeah, but I've seen it before.
Yeah,
I
it
mean
does.
that's an increasingly common thing. Like I feel like I'm the only one that really had kids in my 20s.
It is an increasingly common thing, and I think it has a lot to do with the way people are told that they have to focus on their career first and whatnot.
Yeah, but I think the drawback to that kind of mentality is that as you get older, you tend to be a lot more easygoing when it comes to children, and children are not exactly, they need some standards, and when you're younger, you usually have more of that energy to be like, no, don't, you're not doing that, and you're probably, at least in my case, I'm less likely to. I'm the type of parent that will go. You'll hear me talk to my kids. Like yesterday, I had to get them some swimming trunks for camp or something. And, you could hear me as I'm walking into the store laying down the ground rules. Don't touch anything. Don't look at anything. Don't ask me for anything. You're not getting anything. Don't run around in the store. Anything you do that I told you not to do will result in a belt.
There you
But you
go.
don't hear you don't hear that kind of parenting anymore. And I think if you're older, you tend to be less like that because it's
And
like, oh,
you're not gonna see it in an article either. Somebody asked when the article was written. It was written 2 days ago, so it just came out. This is a new thing.
oh, and I guess I have to explain because some people there's a contingent of people I've noticed that's like, oh, well, I don't, I'm totally against the idea of uh, of of spanking my kids or whatever, and these are from people who are not parents, and therefore their opinions are not valid.
What is up with
Uh,
this the spam here? What is going on here, Ben?
is it ninja spam or
It's
our
a
friend
bunch of
Kimmy?
weird rants about stuff, and I don't know where they came from.
Is it? It's not our old friend Mind Out of Sync, is it?
No, it's just some dude that wants to spam stuff. He has multiple accounts, at least 3 now.
No.
It still shows up in the replay. Oh, well, it's all right, I guess. If it continues, I think you have a wrench, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what their purpose is, but nobody's reading that crap. I mean, I don't care. Anybody can post pretty much whatever they want in here, but if it's bothering you guys, then it can go. I don't really see. It has absolutely nothing to do with what is going on. But I think we're basically about to wrap up. Anyway, we're hitting the hour and 30 mark, and we have covered all of the topics. So you lose, Ben. You need mods. I do have a few.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be one. I'm
One
just
one
not.
one of them's in here. So.
I'm just not. I'm not using it right now because I'm playing a non-existent video game with a female lead and trying to beat the last boss.
There we go. Multitasking here. All right.
As always.
So, with that being said, thank you everybody for watching and listening and taking part in the chat. And we'll figure out next time if this happens what we'll do. But since we're wrapping up, it doesn't even make a difference. All right, we'll be back next time with more. I'm not sure exactly when yet, but you'll get the notification. Make sure you are, if you subscribed if you're not, and also that you have the notification on, and that way you won't miss any streams. Take care, everybody.